Okay. Okay, I know I might have messed up an over the ball game yesterday, but it was such great fun, and I haven't got an over the ball game tonight. So I can't do too much racing damage later. So let's play another consultation game. So the team captain is Benko Gambler, and I'm going to make it clear. I'll put to make it clear. I can see your comments, Benko, but we'll now turn off spectator ones. So I'm just going to turn off spectator ones. Ignore spectators checked. Okay, so I played e4. So Alekhine defense. Could try 4 pawns attack. It's a bit crazy. I could create loads of weaknesses, potentially completely losing imbalances. Or do I want to just play more solidly? To be honest, I think feeling a bit rough today, so I'm going to try and play more solidly. I'm going to play ED and then maybe C4, knight F3 and H3. Kind of, I think I've seen Fischer play that against the Alekhine defence. Although he did use the Alekhine defence in the 1972 match against Spassky. He had was it a win or a very nice draw? I think it might have been a draw. But anyway, he had this solid system as white. So I can just play for trying to get the D4 square later, I think. So knight F3 here. Well, that allows bishop G4. Maybe H3. Well, knight C3 first to see if this bishop's going to get blocked in with E6. Is G6 going to be played? Okay. So there was quite a few comments. Thank you on the YouTube for the other two games. And by the way, I was looking up the Morris Smith stats, and they're dreadful on ChessGames.com. The Morris Smith in that line with knight C6 and A6. So this A6 idea is very good. It seems it's not with the idea of B5, but just taking away B5 square for white seems statistically very good for black. So I'm not really sure about the gambit actually. I'm biased towards it because I once wrote an article on it which gave me a bit of confidence, but I'm not sure it's really that sound as a gambit. I was just saying on the cafe, maybe the sound of gambits are basically to do more with undermining the sense of when you gambit the C pawn or the F pawn or the B pawn in the Benko gambit, you're trying to get central pawn majority sometimes, or you're not giving up a valuable centre pawn, and the D4 pawn which you give up in the Morris Smith is quite a valuable pawn, because a lot of strategies like in the Royal Le Pez are based on C3 and D4 trying to get a sense like here, that this pawn on D4 is important, potentially these two squares, you give that up voluntarily, maybe that's long term. I don't think that's too hot. So anyway, I'm going to play, I don't like pressure on D4 here, so I'm going to play H3. I'm going to waste time with H3. I know that E5, D5, but this knight might be misplaced. I know I had a blitz game in that recently, and I reshuffled the knight later after E5 and F5, and that was fun. I hope I don't get hacked with an E5 and F5 in this game. If I do, I do. But I'm playing like Bishop E2, Bishop E3, and it's a solid position, avoiding the pin on the knight. So this is the system I've used a bit since. There was a key Fischer game in this, which maybe I should video annotate. I think it was in Fischer's 60 memorable games book, actually. It might have been a memorable game against the Alekhine defence, or Alekhine. I remember as a junior there was this this lecture by Nigel Short, and I think he said Alekhine is the way it's pronounced. Alekhine, yeah. Anyway, so Alexander Alekhine, of course, the world champion. This is how the defence is named, and sometimes I see a reference to Alexander as a hypermodernist, but I think the three main hypermodernists were like Nimzovich, of course, Reti, and also Breyer, who once wrote that if you play E4, White's game is in its last throes. But of course, Fischer said E4 is the best by test. which is an interesting thing. Best by test. That's interesting in itself, actually, because a lot of the stats on chessgames.com, you know, maybe at the amateur level they're scoring, but maybe they're not fundamentally, they're fundamentally rather unsound, but they're scoring heavily. So things like initiative and king safety issues, if someone makes one mistake and they're blown to bits, then that's going to bias the statistics. So this idea of best by test kind of leans on that rather than, you know, best by theoretical research. Anyway, I should really protect d4, I think. Okay, so c4 and d4 is under fire. e5, d5, 97. There might be f5 coming up later. I'll be facing a kingside attack. So, but this idea of best by test, not like best by like theoretical advantage if you can play only moves if needed, like a computer. That would be a completely different repertoire book generated, depending on your philosophy, really. Yeah. So here, anyway, I've tried to get a solid sort of position, and I know that e5, d5, 97 facilitates f5, and this bishop might be a target. So in fact, I might even want to castle queenside rather cheekily. Maybe queen d2 and castle queenside. If this happens, I think I've seen an idea like that actually in this line. So I wonder, is the team tempted for e5 here? I think it means g4 actually. The idea I've seen is actually an early g4 to try and clamp down on f5. So e5, d5, 97, maybe g4 is rather cheeky. Try and hijack f5, some of the implications of it. To be able to play g takes and use the g file. I think so far this is going better than my game against David Sands last night, because I haven't lost the d pawn, it's still there on d4. Controlling these key central squares, the centre of the battlefield, the hill, the mountain, where you can see either side. The magic of the centre. It's there with this d4 pawn. Anyway, so, but it's under fire, obviously. But is there a misplaced knight on b6? You can imagine Botvinnik plotting with plan after plan to do something about this knight. Create a winning endgame with this knight on b6. Shut it out. So anyway, e5. So this vicious plan of f5 has unveiled. Okay, so I think d5 here. And then maybe g4. So we'll play g4 to try and interrupt f5. Oh dear. Otherwise this is tame, isn't it? If I castle f5, it's like King's Engine attack. I have to do something about this f5. Bronstein actually crushed Sands. I was going to look at that game anyway before even playing Sands last night. Just like 2 weeks ago, it was in the King's Engine. He played this g4 and he clamped down so much on f5. Sands gave up his d6 pawn and lost like 3 moves later. It was like a win in 24 moves. Lloyd's Bet Masters a few years back when Bronstein was, it was the one where same tournament, David Bronstein had lost to one of my fellow club players at the time, Paul Georgiou. Amazingly, Paul beat David Bronstein, but yeah, he was playing in lots of UK tournaments, David Bronstein, really. He was very, very active even in his 80s, so it's a bit like a Korchnoi. You know, there are some players that they had a taste of playing in the World Championship matches, and they were also very, very long lasting. Of course, Korchnoi is still playing and still doing well, did fantastic at Gibraltar. So anyway, so the knight's rerouting, hey, they're using my own plan against me from the Blitz live commentary. Okay, so I'm going to not castle kingside here. I'm going to play queen d2. If f5, I might consider takes and then bishop g5 to make sure my bishop doesn't get trapped. I think c5 here, is that out of the question? Or queen b3, that's another possibility. Because the diagonal might be sensitive of f5. So it might be sensitive to c5, so maybe queen b3. But then knight c5? Not sure. Queen d2, I can play bishop h6. I think I'm going to go for queen d2, as well as bishop g5, there's bishop h6. I want to use this rook on the g file. I'm playing bishop g5 or h6. Oh dear, someone's... I'll just put I can see you. Don't reveal anything. I feel naughty. So anyway, this is a kind of revolutionary kind of team consultation game where you get to see the video after of one side, but yeah. So 19 members now of the team. I don't even want to go to that tab because that would be naughty to see. Oh, they got high rated players, whatever that might influence play. So let's just keep it like this. I don't really know who I'm playing against. Could be loads of 2500s now, 2600s. Okay. So yeah, it's like a King's Engine in reverse. The knight's been rerouted. It's done its job in provoking d5 and c4. But I'm playing it like a King's Engine with g4, trying to clamp down on f5, which is black's liberating move. So I don't know. Yeah, this Bronstein thing. It was a bit of a. I don't know. I think I was on the evolution bit and then series, and I just got attracted all of a sudden. There's a bit of a thing to his games recently, and I want to carry on that on. And then there's this 30-minute at the moment, of course, the Amber, organised by Ustrom. So let's see. Bishop h6 is ruled out. There's bishop g5. The e4 square. Now, has the team considered strategically that e4 is a potentially winning square in the King's Engine? If a knight can go to e4, statistically it's winning games. I wonder if anyone on the team has mentioned that. So I'm going to play bishop g5 because I don't want to lose the dark square bishop. I want to try and maybe get a knight on e4, and then hopefully that'll hold position a little bit more together and I can castle queenside. Mind you, h6, I'm going to have to, I don't know, h6 looks... That's going to be dangerous because now the knight's actually supporting h6. That's a pain. If the queen moves, maybe there's bishop e7. No, the knight's also supporting e7. So say the queen moves to c4. Sorry, c7. If I castle queenside, there's h6. I'm going to have to lose the poor dark square bishop here. So I'm wondering, is this whole line any good? I just played a rubbish line here. I don't know now. Oh dear. It looks like a neat position for black, except for the e4 square. The knight's lost a bit of time, but it's coming back into the game. It's already eyeing an important square c5 here. Queen b6, actually, doesn't that tie me down? If I castle queenside, I lose the f2 pawn. Even worse, isn't it? It gets worse. Oh dear. Queen b6. So not only I can't castle queenside, I'm also threatened with h6. Interesting. I might actually have to play bishop e3 there. Aha. Queen to a5. Okay, so if I castle, there's almost knight c5 to b3, or is that my imagination? No, it's not dangerous at the moment, tactical ideas like that. So if I just castle, should I play knight e4? Offer the exchange of queens. That might favour me in this match, because also the bishop can retreat back, so maybe knight e4. But then queen b6, then maybe bishop e3, then knight e3, fe. I've got the knight f6, knight fd2. I can reinforce the knight on e4. I get this kind of terrible looking pawn, but both knights potentially coming off, and then I don't know, bishop f5, bishop d3. I'm holding the position together. So knight ce4 puts pressure on d6 as well. Let's offer simplification. Knight ce4 solves some of the issues mentioned earlier with h6. Where do I put the bishop? It can just come back here. Actually, on e4, I'm actually protecting f2. So if queen b6, I can castle queenside now without losing f2. So anyway, David Bronstein, I mean, I think a lot of his games are potentially losing trump cards out of the opening, which actually provides an immediate distinctive flavour, dynamic flavour, because without that, the opening is really like, you know, the bed you sleep in. You know, if you get an exciting opening, sometimes the game's guaranteed to be really quite exciting. Now here, okay, what are the trump cards? Maybe the semi-open G-file pressure, maybe h4, h5. The opening's definitely left some remnants. It's given me this strong knight on e4 though. Without that f-pawn, this is potentially a winning knight anyway. I've got pressure on d6, but I can't dislodge this knight because I haven't got my g-pawn. Okay, I can play bishop b4 as well, maybe positionally. Try and target d6. So this knight could be celebrated, but I don't want to be too materialistic. But on the other hand, bishop b4 seems like an immediate threat actually. d6 is a little bit vulnerable here. It's like the pawn chain's already been undermined, because usually in the King's Engine there's a pawn on c7, so the exploitable part of the pawn chain has been moved up already. Without that c7 pawn, d6 is already a liability. As demonstrated, if this knight moves I can just chop it, but bishop b4 also demonstrates that this bishop being rerouted here on this diagonal is pretty good. Bishop b4 looks pretty good here. How unexpected. I thought it was going to be harassed later with h6, and now it's rerouting to b4. How completely unexpected. So strategically there's still pawn chains here to undermine. There's a knight to reinforce on e4 first, but then if knight g5, knight d4, so this isn't so bad, is it? For black, if knight d4, I don't know if I play bishop d1, looks a bit passive. Maybe then bishop f5. I can't allow knight d4. So basically my beautiful knight, can I replace it with bishop? If I did bishop d3, knight e4, bishop e4, I can still keep this knight out of d4, and this black wants double pawns. I think that might be the way to go, because this bishop's not doing much at the moment on e2, but it is supporting f3. I don't know. If I take on f6, that's liberating. If I play knight g5, knight d4. And in that position, e2, I can't castle without losing the bishop. Bishop d1, bishop f5. I don't know, f3? Doesn't seem to be losing straight away. There's no knight c2s or anything. There's also, I don't know, knight g5, knight d4, bishop d3, there's knight f3. Bishop d3 here, I'm sort of loosening f3. But it might be the way to go, because I can't see immediately how f3 is exploited. Especially if I've got bishop on e4 supporting f3. So I think I might go with bishop d3 here. Bishop d3. Oh blimey, I've only got 4 minutes 22 left. Are we working on that 10-minute maximum? Whoops. I don't know if we're working to that. I feel a bit rough. Mm. 15 minutes negotiated with the captain. So bishop d3. So trying to get the best of all worlds, keep a blockade on the e4 pawn without leaving the knight to come to d4. f3 supported now, except so much for the pawn chain being undermined, and this bishop b4 is still a potential threat. I want to get the rooks connected, I think. Castle and queenside, bishop b4, c5, d6, bishop d5, that sort of thing. Strategic crush possibilities based on the pawn chain would be c5. Or just undermining the pawn chain, or just attacking it. Bishop b4. Tactical vulnerabilities on the f file. keeping the knight out of d4, which is also a strategic vulnerability. And castles, bishop b4, c5. Try and use the light square bishop, give it more scope with d6. Hitting b7, maybe it's coming to d5. Also possibilities of rook g1, h4, h5, hg. Get rid of the isolated pawn, expose the king more. So maybe castling queenside, because if I want to play h4, h5, I want that rook on h1. If I castle, the rook's not on h1. Castling queenside rook on d1 also supports the d pawn. So c5, d6 will be supported by the rook on d1. So I think castling queenside, but rook c8 here is embarrassing. Technicality. Technical issue. So what about just king e2 then? Just supports f3. If rook c8, there's rook c1. I can still play h4, and that's b5, trying to expose the king. That's b3. Takes. The pawn chains could come up there. Is it exploitable? I'm not sure. King e2 might be a better bet because rook c8 seems to be embarrassing if I castle queenside. So I'm going to go for king e2. I hope that knight d4 is not going to come in. It's supported by this knight at the moment. So rook c8, rook c1. Unless there's rook c4, bishop b5. Ouch. Ooh. No, there's bishop d3 there. There's e4, gets a bit messy. Ooh. There's rook takes e4. That's okay. That's okay. I think. Just about. So rook c8, rook c1. I want to keep strategic possibilities of c5 and h4, h5. So these two pawn breaks. This would get rid of the isolated pawn, improve, from my perspective, the king's safety, make it worse. And also the c5 would maybe liberate the bishop, create a dangerous passed d pawn. Do I also want to consider again, if I get the chance, rook c1 and bishop b4 to attack d6? That's interesting. Diet Coke time. Will it be naughty to check the rating distribution? I'm curious now. b5, oh dear, striking at my pawn chain. So if b3 actually takes rook b8, looks dangerous. I'm going to have to keep the pawn chain intact. c5, I don't think it's possible. Just takes d6 as knight d6. So if I keep my pawn chain intact, there's rook b8, there's rook b1. I think I'll have to do this. Keep the pawn chain intact for the moment. And fight the b file. If rook b8, then rook b1. Okay. I think if I use this rook though, I don't know, do I need to use the other one as well, potentially on b4? But they've used that rook, which means the other rook can't come over there without that rook moving first. So the choice of rook here was interesting. If they'd used that rook, then they could have done rook b8. Given they haven't used that rook, can I play this and leave this rook for h4, h5? If rook c1, is there anything dangerous here? Rook c7 though, to double. Whoa. Oh, my c4 pawn is being targeted as a vulnerability, obviously. I think I'm going to have to protect it with... I don't know, can I think of a positional sack based on c4? If I protect it, I'm about to lose it, but I get h4, h5 in, does that matter? If they play h5, I get g-file pressure. So I can expect a doubling, I expect to lose that pawn, but if I get this in, does that have any influence on the game? Knight g5, I don't get nothing, bishop's blocked in. And king's a bit vulnerable as part of that vulnerability of the c pawn, this diagonal. I don't know. Maybe I forget about this h4 plan. What could this rook be used for? Maybe a4. If I play rook c1, there's no a4. If I can play a4, I can use the a file or force bc. I'm going to end up doubling to defend that. So this h4 pawn might be weakness anyway. Bishop f6, for example. h5 first, bishop f6. So I think, I don't know, the h3 pawn will be impri though. Okay, I'm going to use this one and hope for the best, and leave the possibility of h4. And this philosophical kind of, almost philosophical discussion about which rooks to use and why. Keeping this break open versus defending c4. Keeping this break of h4, h5. So I've still only got about 6 minutes left, assuming 15 minutes. I've been a bit slow today, so okay. BC, BC. Imagine doubling, rook c7, rook c3, rook c8, rook c1. How does black proceed? Maybe sacking, then bishop b5, bishop d3 might be e4. It looks a bit nasty. Oh dear, I'm in for a terrible ride here. Can the king support c4 with king d3? That would be an outrageous move. King d3. Why didn't I think of that before? King d3. The king supporting c4 would mean an entire rook does not have to come to the aid of the c4 pawn here. I can just, if this doubling occurs, I can play h4 and then just play king d3 to support c4. Unless there's rook c4, bishop b5. Yeah, that would be embarrassing. And then rook c1, no. The king's still holding c4. So the king can actually help maintain the pawn chain. I think there was a video recently in an engine versus engine game actually about the king coming to the aid of the pawns. Very interesting to play king d3. This is king d3. Which means h4, h5 is more on the cards now, if that really is the case. Oh, they're not looking optimistic. They're saying resign. That's always good news. I don't even have a knight on e4. It's just a bishop. Is it that bad? I wonder if they're considering rook c7 then. Okay, doubling pawns, fracturing pawns. I can get to play f3 like in a recent over-the-board game. That's not too bad. I think if I don't, I'm losing the knight. Say king d3, I'm just losing the knight. King e3, bishop h6. Nasty, I'm going to have to take forced. Maybe playing f3 now. Or king d3. King d3 is rook f2, so maybe f3 first. I can play king d3. In fact, that counters like potential sacks on c4. Hope this is okay tactically. Play for king d3. And then I can finally get on with my plan, I hope, of h4. Is that too much to ask? To be able to play h4 without my queenside falling apart? Mind you, now there's going to come like bishop f5, but after king d3 I'm actually attacking d4 as well, so rerouting the bishop, I could victimise d4 as a new plan. Emergent plan, unless bishop f5 takes, there's rook f3. Uh-oh, rook f3, I don't know, this is getting... Oh, now the f file's a big problem, so my king's being victimised again. So bishop f5, king d3, bishop e4, fe, there's rook f3. That doesn't look too pleasant. Oh dear. Actually, okay, let's see. Bishop f5. Maybe I can just take on b5. Okay. Can I get one pair of rooks off? No, bishop b5. Unless that's an exchange sack. Doesn't look too convincing as an exchange sack, so I'm going to just take the pawn. So bishop f5 could be a pain. What about bishop b4? Just targeting d6. Bishop e4 fe, and just wait for a rook to attack e4. Then maybe take on d6. I don't know. Hope my king's not going to get in trouble. The bishop's blocked in by its own pawn. It's not just the case of double pawns. Slightly less quality piece here. If I can get one pair of rooks off actually, and then king d3. Don't want to allow rook to b2. It'd be lovely to get rook to the 7th rank if this wasn't challenged. Getting one pair of rooks off might help here, because something like bishop f5, king d3 I could play more freely without worrying too much about take, rook f3, and then king e2, this pawn might be dropping off. Interesting. So there's a kind of diced structure here. On the other hand, h3 is dropping off. I didn't even realise. Takes bishop h3. There's rook b7 though, with some compensation maybe, so who cares. Then there's also maybe c5 and d6 at some point, or bishop b4. I would like to have an active position like that anyway. If they want to win my h3 pawn, fine. These pawns are going to take a while to get down. I hope. Or there's bishop takes b1 if I want to avoid losing this pawn. I think rook takes b1, just treat it as a positional sack. So bishop h3, rook b7. Okay, so positional sack time. Just give up h3 to get rook b7. The Iranian will be approving of this, I think. Likes giving up a pawn to get a rook on the 7th, I've noticed from some games. So is bishop h3 going to be played? The accountants on the team are going to be thinking, if we take the pawn on h3, that means we're +1. That's good for our accountancy records. That materialistically we're +1. Is it safe? I don't know. That's a Dustin Hoffman film, isn't it? Isn't it safe? That's Marathon Man. Is it safe? I'm not really sure. Okay, the accountants have won over the team. Okay, so rook b7. I hope the rook on the 7th is useful. I don't know, rook f7 though. I hope d6 is still vulnerable. Rook f7 supports a7 straight off the bat. Then rook b8. Okay, rook b8. I'll try and get a pin. Actually, bishop f8. There's king d3. Rook f8. Come on, the team doesn't want a repetition. Come on. They do. Okay, this is a test. I'm gonna have to test them. Do they want to draw here? Have I really got enough compensation? Oh. How can I avoid a draw then without losing? They're a bit short on time actually. Should I be naughty and try for a win? What about rook b5? I'm going to try and play c5. Try and get this passed pawn going. Bishop d7, rook a5. So king d3 to look forward to. Get some positional torture going somehow. Rook b5 might be the way to do it, to keep the game alive. For c5, try and get past d pawn. I'm going to go for it. Naughty, rebellious. Even though I pawned down, I'm playing for a win now. c5. Is the rook committed to protecting the 7th rank? If I can get king to d3, that will improve things. Bishop's more tied down to d4. Get the bishop to b4, it'll start to be overload in black's position, I hope. So king d3, bishop b4, maybe c5 at the right moment. Mind you, this h pawn is a bit of a runner down here, potentially, but they're in time pressure now. I think this is a great opportunity for me to put the pressure on, if I can. So c5 here might actually create that trump card. Past d pawn. Bishop b4 is less effective. Actually, that pawn is ready to roll. So maybe c5 is worth playing now. Try and get him past pawn. So bishop f1 skewering king rook. I just noticed bishop f1. There's actually king d3, bishop f1 would be embarrassing here. Skewering king and rook. Oh! Actually, so d3 is almost a decoy for king d3, bishop f1. So bishop d3 holds though. Whoa, something to bear in mind. This bishop eyeing f1. So they're down to 4 minutes. I'm hoping this creates panic and confusion. Can I win from this position? Is it passive? Is it really passive, black? Have they not blockaded? Are they going to allow me c6? They can't allow c6, surely, because then rook b7, c7. If I get, so no, they can't allow that. Rook's off the light squares. d6 to the bishop d6. Unless there's rook c6 and bishop d5. Oh, another exchange offer. Okay, can I give myself the luxury of avoiding rook a5 or rook b5? I'm going to go for it, rook b5. Actually, how long have I got? 18:45. I don't want to lose on time another game today after last night. So I've got 15 minutes. I'm going to have to work this out. Oh dear. This is getting confusing. How much time do I have? That's when it reaches 15. So I've got 3 minutes 39 against their 3 minutes 39 now. So that's pretty balanced. If I've only got 15 minutes, that's 3 minutes 39. So they're in time pressure. d6 doesn't quite work here. Maybe king or f4 first. King d3 first. To play f4, win the d4 pawn. It's bishop b5. I'll stop. That's. I'm going to get mated. I think I have to stop bishop b5. That's very cheeky of them. Cheek. To play bishop b5. Now my rook's trapped though, but a6 is a bit vulnerable. Was that little cheapo? If I can get to play f4. The pieces are kind of awkward, but can I try and push this bishop away from that to play king d4? They've just left the bishop in pre. And I'll take back. So if bishop f6, maybe I can play d6. If bishop d6, maybe I can play king d4. And then bishop c3, try and get this bishop on this diagonal, that would be useful. Bishop's fairly passive at the moment. Alright, it's d6 now. Liberating the bishop finally. Pawn's not too vulnerable. Can I use this bishop b4 to c5 to try and, if they're really going to play rook a7? Looks like a poxy idea. Rook a7. And play bishop c5, bishop d4. was bishop d8, almost winning my rook. That's good. I can move the rook somewhere soon. If I can get bishop c5 in, I can just take that. I don't know, options. I don't know, bishop f5 first, and then bishop c5. So I can try and get a pawn back with advantage, I hope. Okay, get this pawn back, and then try and get maybe rook to c7 now. If I get rook c6, rook c7, there's a lot of time pressure on the team. This is a bit difficult, I think, to play. But am I going to have a problem with their passed pawn soon? I might have to play here actually, just to stop this passed pawn for rook b2. Try and use my own a pawn to get that to a7. Have the rook covering h2. If I can get the pawn to a7. So it's starting to be more promising. Now there's rook e2 as an idea, and a7 has emerged. So a7, if I can get a7 in, this will be good. a7 threatening to queen. Well, the bishop doesn't have to. I don't have to move the bishop. I know it's a time pressure win, really. Naughty. But that's part of the game, as I found out last night. Losing on time. Okay. Yeah. Good game. Okay. Upload a video soon. Cheers. Stop recording now. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube, and you can join these games if you go to ChessCube Kingscrusher Cafe. Might have them more frequently. Thanks very much.